Hello everybody and welcome to another countdown of the top 10 best-selling light novels in Japan. This covering the week of February the 12th to the 18th of 2018. And this week, the Ryuo's work is never done is done. Yeah, we finally get a list without any volumes of the Ryuo's work is never done. It looks like well, I don't know. I think it's mainly just because a whole bunch of really good stuff has come out, some really popular stuff that's kind of bumped it off the list, but maybe we will see it return, and we are still relatively early in the anime season. But at least it means that we've got a room for a whole bunch of other books this week. I think it's only like 3 that have managed to stay on the list this week, and really at least 2 of them will not surprise any of you, I'm pretty sure. So let's get into the list. At number 10, with 4,530 copies sold, a brand new volume number 1, and I am going to butcher this title. Really, these light novel titles, they just kill this poor non-Japanese speaking individual. Boukensha ni Naritai to Miyako ni Deteitta Musume ga S-rank ni Natteta. Oof. Also known as My Daughter Who Went Out to the Capital Wanting to Become an Adventurer Was an S-rank. So this one is a brand new series. Of course, we do not have it in English. This one is a top rated story from the Japanese website So You Want to Be a Novelist. This has become a really big thing, of course. This website, it's basically sort of like a Japanese equivalent of Wattpad, or the Japanese writing equivalent of, say, DeviantArt. And so essentially it's writers just posting their stories on this website, and people can vote on them. They can sort of, give them a thumbs up, I guess, or, basically there are metrics in place to show just how popular a story is. Now, this story is a pure fantasy story, and it's about a young girl who has become an S-rank adventurer. Although I don't know how old she's supposed to be. She looks a little older on the book. It's not like she's like, like some 10-year-old or something. Like she's, I'd say, late teens. And she is going across the world fighting demons. But she misses her dad. And so the story is kind of about her trying to find her way back to her dad's village to see her dad again. At least that's kind of the gist I get from this, typically horrible Google translation. But essentially it is a story about family, and a story about fantasy and adventures, and valuing family and trying to find time for family even though you got demons to kill. That's kind of the gist that I get from it. It sounds like it could be kind of cute. Just because it's popular on this website does not necessarily mean that it's good. We have had some good titles come from it. Konosuba was posted there. I believe there's a couple others. I believe Log Horizon. I know Log Horizon was originally a web novel. I don't know if it was specifically this website. But so yeah, we have had some luck with properties coming out of this website, but I wouldn't necessarily consider that to be the be-all and end-all of endorsements, but, it sounds cute. At number 9, with 4,603 copies sold, volume 7.5 of Youkoso Jitsuryoku Shijou Shugi no Kyoushitsu, or Classroom of the Elite. Once again, the question must be asked, why don't we have this series in English? Why? Why, oh light novel translating gods, do we not have this book licensed yet? This one, again, like every volume, ever since the anime, like every time a volume of this series comes out, it hangs in there for a long time. And this is a sides volume. It's a 0.5 volume. It's not even like it's, really a mainstream, like continuing the main story type volume. And it's been on the list for, geez, I want to say at least 4 weeks now. Like it's been on there a long time. I mean, it's outlasted the Ryuo's work is never done. It's outlasted a ton of other books. still doing pretty well. Like, all in all, you really can't say much other than this series attained a lot of popularity when the anime showed, and it has continued to hold on to that popularity with each new volume that's been released. So it must say something to me about the quality of the book. At number 8, with 5,496 copies sold, Volume 3 of Saikyou no Kanteishi Teidere no Koto, also known as Who is the Strongest Appraiser? You know, guys, someday I will actually try and figure out how to properly pronounce Japanese titles. I've watched a couple of YouTube videos and tried, but the old dog's mouth just isn't learning new tricks. But anyway, this one, volume number 3, it is not licensed in English. Again, it's a horrible Google translation because I really couldn't find much on it, which, again, it's like 3 volumes in and nobody's really talking about it in English. But basically what the gist seems to be is it is an isekai. We have a male student who is swept away to another world and receives this gift, as is sort of wont to do in these kind of books. And basically it's the eyes of God. And it is sort of like a ultimate skill to be able to appraise the worth of something. And from what I can get, the gist of this horrible Google translation is that our main character, instead of relying on this gift as sort of a cheat, decides, I really like cooking and I'm going to use it to appraise ingredients and create some really awesome dishes that don't exist in this world. So he becomes a cook. Like, that's kind of the gist I get. If you know more about this series, or, you know, you can read anything in Japanese and you want to sort of correct me on this or explain it more, or, you know, sort of fine tune it, then by all means, feel free to do so in the comments down below. At number 7, with 5,511 copies sold, volume number 4 of Tato Eba Last Dungeon Mai no Mura no Shonen ga Joban no Machi da Kurasu Yona Monogatari. Roughly, that translates to a story such as a boy in the village before the last dungeon lives in the early stages. You gotta love Google Translate. There is no English license for this light novel. There is a manga spin-off of this light novel, and again, we have no English license for the spin-off. Basically, what this one is about, the gist I get, again, from horrible Google translation, this one is about a boy who is named Lloyd, and he lives in sort of a remote village, and the people of this village are like descendants of a great heroic soldier or soldiers, and Lloyd decides that he wants to leave the village and he wants to become a soldier. And of course, people are very concerned because he's considered to be pretty much the weakest kid in the village. Now, the one thing that I'm not too sure on this is that it makes it sound like the village itself is actually the first kind of somehow connected to the last dungeon. And so even Lloyd being weak in the village makes him pretty darn strong out in the normal world. At least that's kind of the gist I get from it. So basically he leaves the village and goes to the capital, and he lives with a witch who is the apprentice of the village elder, and it's basically about his journey to try and become a successful soldier. That's kind of the gist I get from it. Again, it's a 4th volume, but there's really nothing online in English about this, and even I even thought sometimes when a series has a manga, then you can at least find, like, you know, some scanlations or whatever. Nothing. Like, there are some panels, but they are still in RAW, so it did nothing to try and help me figure out what this series is really about. But I think that's kind of the gist. That's kind of, I think, the idea. Again, if you have any luck reading Japanese, feel free to let me know in the comments down below. At number 6, with 5,759 copies sold, volume 4 of 29 to JK. Now, this series, again, another series 4 volumes. I know this has been on the top 10 before. Volume number 3 was in the top 10. So sells well, but very, very little in English. And I kind of wonder if it's because the premise okay, so the premise basically sounds like we have a 29-year-old man who likes like comic books and video games, who is ordered by his boss to effectively date the boss's granddaughter who's like 15. The one consistent thing that Google Translate is the inappropriate age difference romantic comedy. I'm like, you're darn straight it's inappropriate. Like only in Japan, man. That's kind of why I think there's maybe not a lot in English, because it's like, whoa, this is like illegal in most Western countries. Like totally illegal. Totally. So yeah, so there's obviously no English license for this one. This one has a manga as well based on it, but we don't have a license for that as well. And like I said, given the somewhat taboo nature of this story, I really have my doubts that we're going to see anybody in a mad dash to bring this out in English. At number 5, with 6,174 copies sold, I'm not even going to try it. Is It Wrong to Try to Pick Up Girls in a Dungeon, volume number 13, special edition. So, now this is a series that if you watch any of the videos on this channel, if you've watched my videos, you know this is one of my favorite series. We do, of course, have it in English, obviously. We've had 10 volumes released. Volume number 11 is coming out in April. From Yen On. They are the ones publishing it. So we're really not that far behind. Like, we'll be caught up probably with the Japanese releases before the end of the year at this rate. Of course, there was also a 13-episode anime which streamed on Crunchyroll. It covered volumes 1 to 5, although I highly recommend reading the books because the anime did rush a lot of stuff and kind of cut out some sort of, you know, just really good character building moments. So I really highly recommend reading the books. This one, in Aurario, fearless adventurers band together in search of fame and fortune within the monstrous underground labyrinth, the dungeon. But while riches and renown are incentive enough for most, Belle Crenel, would-be hero extraordinaire, has bigger plans. He wants to pick up girls. Is it wrong to face the perils of the dungeon alone in a single-member guild blessed by a failed goddess? Maybe. Is it wrong to dream of playing hero to hapless maidens in the dungeon? Maybe not. After one misguided adventure, Belle quickly discovers that anything can happen in the labyrinth, even chance encounters with beautiful women. The only problem? He's the one who winds up as the damsel in distress. You know, I put this here because it's the description that was of the first volume of Danmachi, which is what we call this for short because the title's so darn long. I think it's horrible. Like, and maybe it's not horrible for the very first volume of this series, but it really says nothing about where this series goes. I could fill this video for many, many minutes talking about the fabulous points of Danmachi and why you should give it your time and attention. But I mean, essentially, it just boils down to the fact that it is a really great character-driven series. It's not an isekai, but it does have a rather clever way of working in sort of the game mechanics of levels and stuff like that that we associate with a lot of isekai books, or, you know, just sort of tying in some of those game ideas, but does it in a way that works very well with the world, is realistic, isn't sort of that, oh, if I cast a spell, all of a sudden a status window pops up, and it's not like that. It is a excellent series that, while it has a lot of heart, it also goes to some incredibly dark places and puts Belle Crenel, its main character, through a punishing amount of tests. And it really is a journey about this innocent, wide-eyed boy who starts off, you know, really not understanding, I don't think, just how serious things are in the dungeon, to molding him into a true, honest-to-goodness hero who may create incredible change. Fantastic series. Absolutely fantastic series. Now, volume number 13, this is a special edition. Volume 13 was released in 2 editions in Japan. This was the special edition. It was released with a drama CD, which was, I think, the gist I got was that it was like an original story, but it was done like a radio play type thing, and that was included in this special edition. Spoilers, the regular edition, we'll get to that eventually. At number 4, with 7,623 copies sold, Volume 20 of Okami to Koshinryo, aka Spice and Wolf. Now, this one was on the list last week, of course. We do have this licensed in English by Yen On. They're going to be releasing volume number 19 in March of, well, like in 1 month, basically. So we're pretty much caught up to the Japanese releases. Now, as far as I know, I think that's because Spice and Wolf, this series kind of came to an end. And then after some time, the author sort of decided to tell a few other stories, so continued the series. And I think, like, when I was looking online, I think there was like a significant gap of time between volume 19 and now this volume number 20. So it's kind of allowed Yen On to catch up. This one also has had an anime in the past. I'm not too sure how many volumes of the light novels the anime covered. This one is a set in sort of a medievalish type European setting, focuses on a traveling merchant who finds himself joined in his journeys by a wily wolf goddess. And I've read the first volume, and it is a very different type series. I would say that the relationship between Holo, which is the wolf goddess, and Lawrence, which is the merchant, is probably one of the more sweet and sincere relationships that I've seen in a lot of light novels. And maybe it's because the characters are a little bit older and, you know, they're a little bit wiser, and their adventures are more focused on adult things like economics and selling and, you know, how currency is gamed. And yeah, it's a very interesting series. One of the ones that I have to admit, on the one hand, I'm intimidated to try and continue just because I'm so horribly behind. But on the other hand, because I thought the first volume was so decent, it's one of those series that I have a lot of regret that I haven't kind of read more of it. Maybe that will change. Although probably not with, like, you know, the millions and millions of light novels that are getting released. I mean, it's pretty awesome. Like, it's an awesome, don't get me wrong, it's an awesome time to be an English light novel fan, but it does make it hard to try and keep up with everything. At number 3, with 9,683 copies sold, volume number 16 of Netgame no Yome wa Ona no Koja nai to Omota. Or, as we know it, And You Thought There Is Never a Girl Online. This one was on the list last week. It's managed to hang in there and in the top 3, which is fairly impressive given how titles seem to shuffle off this list really quickly, unless you're Sword Art or your Classroom of the Elite. This one, there was a 12-episode anime which was licensed by Funimation. It's basically about a kid who plays online games, gets up the gumption to ask a girl that he plays with online, a girl avatar, if she'll marry him. She turns him down, says, "I'm a dude, not interested." Years later, he's in a new guild. You know, girl asks him to get married in the game. He's like, whatever. Finds out that she's actually a legit girl, and in fact, most of his guild is all girls, and they're not only girls, but they're also his classmates. So hilarity ensues. Once again, sort of one of those slice of life series that combines gaming as sort of a unifying topic with it. And again, a series that I think would probably do well in English, but we do not have a license for it at this point. At number 2, with 64,319 copies sold. I just love how, like, all the list has been like 5,000, 5,500, 6,000. Oh, we get up to 9,000 copies for volume 3 and then 64,000 copies. 64,319 copies sold. It is volume number 13 of Is It Wrong to Try to Pick Up Girls in a Dungeon, the regular edition. I told you we'd get to it. So of course I've already talked about this at length, so there's probably not much more to say. Just to say that this is the regular edition without the drama CD. I'm kind of hoping, now the last time that they did sort of this same idea where they had a special edition with a drama CD, when we got that volume in English, we didn't get the drama CD, but we did get the text of that drama CD as sort of a backstory, like as a short story at the end of the book. So hopefully we'll maybe see that happen with this again, although actually it wasn't this, it was My Youth Romantic Comedy As Wrong As I Expected. That's right. That is what happened with that one. So I don't know whether we'll see that happen with this volume. I don't know if maybe it was just a deal they made for that specific volume, but it'd be kind of cool to at least get it somehow. We don't really get that option, of course, in English. So, but anyway, so yes. So volume number 2, regular edition of volume number 13 of Danmachi. Then finally at number 1 with 65,785 copies sold, it's volume number 5 of Sword Art Online Progressive, the big granddaddy, the one that held the number 1 spot. Very, very commanding holding of that spot last week, manages to hold on again this week. Now, Aaron, because we were talking about this in the comments on the video last week, and I was like, you know what? I'm kind of thinking that Sword Art Online Progressive will hold on again. I will concede that I am only slightly right by saying that this was going to be number 1, because if you combine the sales of the special edition of Danmachi Volume 13 and the regular edition of Danmachi volume number 13, it's actually sold over 70,000 copies, which would have made it number 1. So because the regular edition and special edition are split, that is why it is not in the number 1 spot. Sword Art is in the number 1 spot, which I kind of said last week I figured it would be. So I'm kind of right, but I'm also kind of wrong. So how about we call it a draw? What do you think? What do you think? In any case, so that is our number 1 spot. Of course, what do you say about Sword Art Online at this point? I mean, it's a massive series. It always does very, very well. Progressive is the retelling of the Aincrad storyline. Some of you pointed out, I mean, I've only read the first volume, and admittedly, the first volume was very, very good. Some of you pointed out that they're only on, what was it, the 5th or 6th floor at this point? Like, I thought they'd managed at least to do 2 floors a book and that they were like at least on the 10th floor by now. Yeah, no, not really. They still have like 70 floors to go. Like there's going to be either some big jump all of a sudden and they're just going to jump like 20 floors because they're just going to say, nothing really that important happened. And they beat the boss and they beat the boss and they beat the boss and they beat the boss. And Kirito decided to have a long nap one day and somebody beat like 5 floors while he was doing it. I don't know how he's going to get away with that. Like this is just one of those series that like it cannot go on forever. Like at the rate that Kawahara has been writing this series, he is going to be long dead himself before he manages to finish it unless he figures something out. So I don't know, but definitely if you loved the Aincrad story of Sword Art Online, which I really, you know, I'm reading volume 12 of the main series right now, which is the Alicization arc, and it's not bad, but I always just think to myself, like, this should have been just about Aincrad. Like, it should have just been about Aincrad. And that's what Progressive is. And I think that's why a lot of people really like that series. Plus, it was written a bit later, and Kawahara has gotten much, much better as a writer as time has gone on. So there's a lot of upsides to reading Progressive. Hopefully, he's going to get going. He's only been releasing these things like 1 a year or so. However, it has been put out there that volume number 6 is going to be released in May. So either he's upped the pace in general, or I think somebody was saying that volume 5 and 6 are very closely tied together, kind of an overlapping arc, and that is maybe why they're bringing out volume 6 so close. I don't know, but yeah, I don't know. They really just, you know, keep milking Sword Art Online because clearly people keep on buying it. So this week, I want to say a very special thank you to Taylor M. Treese, Philip Colchia, Gorminator, and Nexon Eve for all their support on Patreon, as well as all the rest of my patrons. Their support helps to keep this channel going and is helping to fund other projects, which if you watched my most recent video, you know that I am putting together a podcast that's going to be also dedicated to light novels, and their support on Patreon is allowing that to happen. So again, a very special thank you to all of my supporters on Patreon. So those are the top 10 best-selling light novels in Japan for the week of February the 12th to the 18th of 2018. So a lot more variety on the list this week, thankfully, although not really much in the way of surprises. Sword Art Online, of course, holding on, very dominant. Danmachi, the latest volume, very, very strong sales. So not a lot of surprises there, but it was kind of fun to see some other titles. I mean, I wish there was a more dependable way of being able to sort of do the legwork myself in terms of figuring these stories out that really have nothing on them in English. But like I said, learning new languages has never been one of my strongest traits. And I just really don't make enough off of YouTube to hire a really great translator that I can send things off to and say, hey, please have this translated within 24 hours. But hey, you know, maybe one day. Maybe one day. In any case, thank you all so much for watching this video. If you're brand new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe. I do this list every week, as well as doing 2 to 3 reviews of light novels on a weekly basis as well. Thanks very much for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Till then, bye-bye for now.